The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, the 6th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
King Herod heard of the disciples preaching, for Jesus' name had become known. Some were saying, John the Baptizer has been raised from the dead, and for this reason these powers are working in him. But others said, it is Elijah. And others said, it is a prophet, like one of the prophets of old. But when Herod heard of it, he said, John, whom I beheaded, has been raised. For Herod himself had set men to arrest John, bound him, and put him in prison on account of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because Herod had married her. For John had been telling Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. And Herodias had a grudge against John and wanted him killed. But she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man, and he protected him. When Herod heard John, he was greatly perplexed, and yet he liked to listen to him. But an opportunity came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his courtiers and officers and for the leaders in Galilee. When his daughter Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his guests. And the king said to the girl, ask me for whatever you wish, and I will give it. And he solemnly swore to her, whatever you ask me, I will give you, even half of my kingdom. She went out and said to her mother, what should I ask for? She replied, the head of John the Baptizer. Immediately she rushed back to the king and requested, I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter. The king was deeply grieved. Yet out of regard for his oaths and for his guests, he did not want to refuse her. Immediately the king sent a soldier of the guard with orders to bring John's head. He went and beheaded him in prison, brought his head on a platter, and gave it to the girl. Then the girl gave it to her mother. When John's disciples heard about this, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
I invite you to please be seated. Doing what's right and social pressure. We've all been there, right? Knowing what you should be doing, yet knowing that by doing it, you're going to get backlash from friends, families, neighbors, or some stranger on the street. We've all been in those challenging situations. Yet this is exactly the situation that Herod found himself. He was trying to protect John by having him arrested, by keeping him under lock and key so Herodias could not get to him because he was under Herod's protection. Yet he fell into a trap of his own making. He promised his daughter whatever she asked for. Now, he probably was thinking she'd ask for some toys or a new pony or who knows what. He probably never thought that she would come back and ask for John to be killed. But he found himself in an extremely difficult situation. He had made a public promise in front of prominent leaders of the government, friends, and then he has this hard choice to do what is the right thing and continue to protect someone he knows is a holy gift from God. We know what his choice was. He decided to protect his status rather than walk in faithfulness. And he's not the only one we see making these hard decisions in Mark's Gospel. When Jesus is brought before Pilate, Pilate is trying everything in his power to find a way to release Jesus. But yet he gives in to the political pressure of the Jewish leaders that says, if you don't do what we want, we will cause a riot. And if we riot, you will lose your position. And he chose to maintain his power rather than use his power to do that which was right, which was protecting the innocent. We find ourselves in a time when it is hard to stand on our faith principles without taking knocks from neighbors, friends, and people who might disagree with where we stand. It is a difficult place to be. But when we look back over our lives, where do you want God to place us? Where do you want God to see you? To be standing in the place of justice and righteousness and protection of the innocent, or making sure that all your friends, neighbors, and families think you're great? Tough place, isn't it? Because we have to live with our friends, families, and neighbors long before we get to our eternal home with God. But that is always the journey and the question that the disciples have had to make time and time again. Where will we stand when history looks back at us? Where will we be? How many of you know that Bishop Eaton, our presiding bishop of the ELCA, Bishop Allende, our local bishop, actually made public statements about social activities and events and political events going on in our world today? How many of you knew they actually do that? If you don't, I suggest you check out the ELCA website for the news releases that come out. There are constantly pieces of news that don't make our local paper, and I'll be honest with you, aren't making the national news either. But there's almost a statement every week from bishops in the ELCA and our presiding bishop talking about the situations going on in their communities and around the world. We have a voice. We have the power to not only speak truth, but to act in truth. But the question becomes, are we willing to take the hits that might come from doing that? I encourage you, if you are a person online, to check those things out and to reflect on what's being said by our bishops on our behalf as representatives of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. There are statements about immigration. There are statements about justice, the fact that Puerto Rico still does not have universal electricity. How many months after a hurricane? There are lots of things that we can talk about and things that we can do to help protect the innocent, to be life givers and life bringers in the world. But it does mean that we take a risk of upsetting someone. That maybe they won't fully agree with us. That maybe they think that there's a simple answer to complicated social and political situations. But if we aren't willing to have the conversation and to speak and study and explore what it means to be Christian in a world that is imperfect, then nothing will change. And we won't change. Part of the challenges of being faithful is learning to grow and being willing to take the pains of growth with it. John faithfully preached the gospel, and he spoke against Herod and his wife, and it cost him his life. Herod tried to protect John, but when it came time to truly draw the line and say, "No, I will not kill him," he gave in to the political and social pressures. Pilate said, "I want to release this innocent man. I find no reason for Jesus to be arrested, let alone killed." But when push came to shove, he protected his own power. Now, none of us are in a position where we're the rulers of a government. But we are people who walk every day down the street and have the ability and willingness, or hopefully the willingness, to speak against the injustices we see. to take a stand to protect the innocent, and to be willing to recognize that some people might not like us for that. How are we being faithful to God's call for us? How are we standing up in a world that says it's all about me, when what we are taught is it's all about God's grace and love? You each have something that is a passion for you. Some place of justice, or a place that you want to show more compassion. And I invite you to explore that place. To find out where you can lend your voice and your actions to bring justice in the world. Whether it's making sure that children are fed, or whether it's speaking around the immigration policies that are happening today. Whether it's about equality for minorities or equality for women, you know where your heart is. You know what God is calling you to do. And I invite you to explore that and act on it. The last thing we want to be is a church that is silent. For silence means that we are indifferent to injustice. Think about that. Silence means we are indifferent to injustice. We can feel it in here, but if we are silent, it means we don't truly care. That we aren't willing to take risks for the sake of another. Discipleship is risk-taking. Discipleship means that there will be people who don't like you. Now that's tough, isn't it? Because we all want to be liked. Jesus preaches a word of hope and comfort and strength, words of invitation and welcome. Are we speaking those same words? Are we acting out in ways that bring that invitation to others? Or are we just making sure that what we need is being protected? It is not easy right now. Our society is very polarized. But I invite you to continue to discern where God is calling you and how you can be a voice of justice for the voiceless. Act in ways of power for those who feel excluded. And recognize that there will be people who won't like you because of it. They may not like your choices. But know that when you do it in prayer, and keep study of Scripture, and in the companionship with the Word of God, your voice will be faithful. And God will assist you in your work. I can guarantee if you go around this room and talk to other people, you'll find other folks with the same passions and the same need to serve for justice. Find them, partner with them, and help us to live the kingdom in this world and be the voice of God each and every day. Not easy work, but what we are called to do and who we are called to be in the name of Christ, the one who saves us and calls us to live in righteousness. Amen.